There's like a bunch of different kinds of antigens, like A antigen, RH.
Okay, so talked about the AB, B, and O blood group, and then we also have the RH blood group. The RH blood group gets its name from the rhesus monkey, which you can see spelled on the screen, because there's actually this antigen was actually discovered in the rhesus monkey. So we got RH factor from that lovely little monkey. Basically, you in the RH blood group, you either have the RH antigen or you do not have it. And if you have that antigen stuck into the surface of your cell, you're RH positive, right? So you'd have like A positive blood, okay? Meaning you have type A blood and you do have the RH factor, okay? If you're A negative, that means you have the A antigen, but you don't have the RH factor stuck into your cells. Okay? Most people are positive. Okay, most people have this RH factor, but not everybody. So you either are positive or negative. And normally, in your body, you don't actually have antibodies against the RH factor if you're negative, right? Whereas, like if you in the A and B blood group, you already have antibodies against the other. Normally, you don't have antibodies circulating against the RH antigen, but you can actually get that developed during pregnancy. Okay, so let's say the mom is A negative, right, and the baby that she's carrying is A positive. During birth, blood kind of gets mixed between the two, okay, and so the mom, seeing the baby's blood as A positive, will develop antibodies against that RH positive, like the RH factor. So the next pregnancy, okay, if she gets pregnant again and the baby's positive again, she now has antibodies against that blood type, and when she gives birth, that blood can mix, right? And some of the antibodies to the RH factor can go into the baby and start causing problems. And you can actually get what's called hemolytic disease of the newborn, where those antibodies actually can kill the baby. So if enough of it gets across. So nowadays, like that used to be a lot more of a problem back in the day before we really knew about this. Nowadays, it's not as much of a problem, at least in the United States. They actually give, if you're negative and you're a mom, they give you like shots to prevent you from actually forming these antibodies in the first place. So it's fine now, but back in the day, it could cause big problems. Okay, so transfusions, we kind of already talked about this a little bit, but if you get the wrong type of blood transfused into you, so let's say you have type A blood and you get type B transfused into you, you're going to get this antibodies that you have already attacking the red blood cells that were just put into your body. Okay, and when they attack it, what happens is those antibodies serve as like they basically clump things together to make it easier for white blood cells to eat stuff. Okay, so they see these new red blood cells and they see them as invaders, like they're going to harm the body. So the antibodies start attaching and clumping all of these red blood cells together. Okay, and if you get a big clump of stuff in your blood that's circulating through your bloodstream, right, that can block off blood flow to certain areas of your body. It also tells the white blood cells to come and eat those, so it'll come and eat those red blood cells and break them down and kill them, and so it can actually cause huge problems in your body and can actually kill you if you get the wrong type of blood put into your body. So they look very carefully at your blood type and a bunch of other things when they actually do transfusions. Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead. So we already talked about this briefly, but the AB is called the universal recipients because they have no antibodies, so they can get blood from anybody. Type O is the universal donors because they have no antigens on the surface of the cell, right? So they can go to anybody and not be attacked. That is misleading. They don't just check for like A or B or positive or negative. They're actually looking at a lot of the blood groups. So when they match you for a transfusion, because those other blood groups does affect like your reaction to that transfusion. So, you see on the TV shows, oh, give me, 2 pints of A negative. They're checking for a lot more things than just if it's A negative or not, right? So it is a little bit misleading. Okay, white blood cells. White blood cells are called white blood cells because they do not have hemoglobin, and so when you look at them under a light microscope, they look clear or white. So we're super fancy when it comes to our naming of the blood cells. They're either red or they're white. Okay, and that's all because of whether or not they have hemoglobin. So normal white blood cell count in a microliter of blood is between 5 and 10,000 microliters, or 5 and 10,000 per microliter. How many red blood cells were there in a microliter? Higher than 2 million, less than a billion. 5 million. 5 million red blood cells in a microliter, right? Okay, good. Very good. So 5 million red blood cells in a microliter, right, and 50 microliters in a single drop of blood. Compare that to white blood cells. You only have between 5 and 10,000 in a microliter. Okay, so there's a lot fewer white blood cells than red blood cells. Okay, however, they do have a very, very important function. If you do have an infection, one of the things that people will look for if they're looking to see why you're sick or whatever is they'll do a blood count, and if you have a higher white blood cell count, that is indicative that you have some sort of infection somewhere. Because when you do get an infection, your white blood cell count increases because it's sending more of an army there to fight off the infection. Okay, so if you have a higher white blood cell count, that could be for infection or cancer. Okay, so we have 2 major classes of white blood cells. So we basically take the white blood cells and we split them into 2 groups, granular and agranular. Okay, granular, they're called granular because when you stain them under the microscope, they have little packets of chemicals inside the cell that stain darker than the rest of the cell. So they kind of look polka dots. They look like grain. Okay, so they're called granular. The agranular, they don't have those little packets of chemicals inside of them, so they don't stain darker, so they kind of stain evenly, so they're called agranular. They don't look polka dots. Okay, and we kind of saw this in this picture, right? So the top ones are granular, and you can see kind of like the dark dots in the cells. You see that? And then the agranular ones are down here at the bottom, and they stain more evenly. So the darker purple stuff in the middle, that's the nuclei of the cell. Okay? Yeah, you have all of these in your cells, or in your body. All of these kinds of cells in your body. Okay? So they're either granular or agranular based on how they stain under the microscope. Okay. So the granular types of white blood cells are the neutrophils, the eosinophils, and the basophils. And neutrophils make up about 2/3 of the granular white blood cells. Okay. Agranular are lymphocytes and monocytes, and we'll talk more about all of these different things and what they do. But the major overarching function of your white blood cells is for protection, okay, against bacterial infection, viral infection, any sort of stuff like that. Okay, so defense against infection, inflammation, and they're also involved in allergic reactions. So if you have allergies, you can thank your lovely immune system and white blood cells for that. All right, we'll talk more about that. Okay, so neutrophils. Neutrophils, 2/3 of the granular lymphocytes are neutrophils. And neutrophils are kind of like the first responders to infection. So they're kind of like the scouting party of the army that goes and sees the enemy and holds the enemy off until the rest of the army gets sick. Okay? Those are the neutrophils. The neutrophils are the first responders, first ones there on the scene, and they're eating bacterial cells or viruses or whatever it is that's trying to get into your body. and holding the front line until more of your white blood cells can get there and help them out. Okay, so neutrophils, first responders. So they're doing phagocytosis, which is eating other things, and they're also releasing enzymes that make bacteria die. All right. So neutrophils first, monocytes come second. Okay. So the monocytes respond to the call of the neutrophils, and they arrive, and they are called big eaters. Okay. Our lovely little monocytes. And they're called big eaters because they can phagocytize more than a neutrophil can. So they're like the big guns. The big guys are walking, right? Like, I'm here to eat stuff, and they do. Okay, so they eat all of the bacteria, way more than the neutrophils can. So neutrophils first, monocytes second. Okay, you also have other types of cells that can arrive on the scene to help out, like eosinophils. Okay, so eosinophils are the ones that are going to be responsible for eating the antibody-antigen complex. So that means that those antibodies, when they recognize something that's not supposed to be there and they start binding to those things and clumping them together, okay, like if you were to get the wrong type of blood, the eosinophils are the ones that are going to come, recognize that, and eat that complex. Okay, so the antibody-antigen complex is what forms when antibodies recognize something back. Does that make sense? Okay. So eosinophils eat those things. They're also important in suppressing inflammation and allergic reactions. So how many of you have ever gotten a cut, right? And then it gets kind of red, and no, nobody's ever gotten a cut. I'm sure. So you get a cut, right? And it gets kind of red and kind of swollen and it's kind of warm. Yes? Okay? That's like the inflammatory response. Okay? Your body does that on purpose. Okay? So it does that to basically dilate blood vessels and bring more blood to the area and more white blood cells to the area to help fight off the bacteria and stuff that got into your cut. Okay? So eosinophils are responsible for suppressing inflammation if it needs to be suppressed, because sometimes your body kind of goes overboard with it, and it can become a problem. And they also help to suppress allergic reactions. So again, an allergic reaction can be bad, right, if it's an extreme allergic reaction. And so eosinophils are responsible for helping to calm down that allergic reaction. Does that make sense? Yeah, EpiPens. EpiPens are not full of eosinophils, but it's actually full of adrenaline. So what happens in an allergic reaction is your body overreacts to something, like a bee sting. Your white blood cells see that bee venom as something that is going to kill you immediately if it's not dealt with right now. And so it just like attacks it, right? This goes all out for it. And when it does that, it kicks your entire immune system like into overdrive. And one of the things that causes the inflammatory reaction, it closes your airway. And so you suffocate because of that allergic reaction if you don't. Because the hormones and stuff that are released in the inflammatory reaction cause this to swell and to close your airway off. Yeah, it's kind of like that. Your body's trying to save you, but it sees the wrong thing as bad. So it sees pollen as bad. It sees bee venom as bad, which it is bad, but it's not going to kill you, right? Your body's reaction to it is what could kill you if you're allergic to it, deathly allergic to it. So the adrenaline, one of the effects of adrenaline is to open your airway. So EpiPens are there to cause that swelling to go down and open your airway and make it so you don't die of suffocation before you can get to the hospital. So, yeah. Anyways. So eosinophils. Eosinophils also are responding to parasitic infections. So if you have a high eosinophil count, it can be indicative of a parasitic infection of some sort. Okay, basophils. Basophils are also involved in the inflammatory reaction, but they amplify the inflammatory reaction. So they're kind of like partly responsible for that overreaction of your immune system to something in an allergic reaction. So they are involved in amplifying that reaction. So you've got basophils that amplify the reaction, and then eosinophils that kind of like moderate it and break it down. So you've got two types, and depending on what your body perceives that it needs, they'll be active. Does that make sense? Okay. Basophils release chemicals that dilate blood vessels, right? Make them bigger, which draws more blood to it. That's the redness, the swelling, the kind of like warmth. Okay, that comes from the dilated blood vessels. Some of those that they release are histamine and serotonin and heparin. Okay, what do you take when you have an allergic reaction? Maybe antihistamine, which is a Benadryl, which is an antihistamine. Okay, so this is one of the major chemicals involved in an allergic reaction, which is why you take an antihistamine if you have allergies. Kind of cool, huh? Yeah. Okay. Lymphocytes. Lymphocytes. You have three types of lymphocytes: T lymphocytes, B lymphocytes, and natural killer cells. Natural killer cells. These guys are very, very, very involved in your immune response. B lymphocytes are going to be one of the types of cells that is recognizing bad things in your body. So it's one of the ones wandering around, okay, and if it sees something that it doesn't recognize, it ingests that thing that it does not recognize, breaks it apart, analyzes it, and then becomes a plasma cell, or can become a plasma cell. And a plasma cell is going to be secreting lots and lots of antibodies. So the B cells are responsible for taking that bacteria that's invading you, ingesting it, breaking it down, analyzing it, and saying, okay, this is how we can fight it. It creates the antibodies, sends the antibodies out so the antibodies can start clumping things together so the eosinophils can come and eat them and prevent that bacteria from taking over your body. Okay, so B cells, super important, right? B cells, you have different kinds of B cells. You have memory B cells that are involved in immunity. And those memory B cells can live in your body for years. Okay? Those are the ones that you want to create when you get shots. Okay? Memory B cells. So if you get like a vaccine, the purpose of that vaccine is for your body to create memory B cells. So what you're doing in a vaccine is to take a little bit of that thing, whatever the virus, the bacteria, whatever it is that causes the disease. It could be the whole thing that's dead, or it could be part of the thing, whatever they've decided is the most effective. Okay, and you get a shot. Okay, your body reacts to that as like it's an actual infection of that disease. Fortunately, it's not, right? It's not like active enough to kill you or cause you to have smallpox. Okay, it's just a little bit of what it is. Your body reacts, okay, and you form these memory B cells. The memory B cells are the things that take and like see that and they remember that disease. Okay, so if your body ever comes in contact with it, those memory B cells see it and they're like, I know how to fight this. Okay, and it starts secreting all of the antibodies and it kills off all of that disease before you even know that you have it. Okay, so that's what a vaccine is doing, is creating those memory B cells. So good, right? Very, very good. However, some memory B cells don't live forever, right? So that's why you have to get like booster shots, okay, for like tetanus. The tetanus one hurts like so much, and like certain kinds of hepatitis and stuff like that. Okay, you have to get booster shots every 10 years or so, because those cells start to die off. So, memory B cells. I got to write a 12-page paper on them in college. It was awesome. Seriously though, just on memory B cells. It's fun. T lymphocytes are responsible for directly attacking things. So they're going to be going right to the things that are invading into your body and attack them and kill them. So the main thing that AIDS attacks is these T lymphocytes. Okay, so AIDS basically gets into the T cells and then bursts the T cells, okay, and kills all of your T cells. They do attack some of your other kinds of white blood cells, but the T cells are their main target. So if you take this one cell out, okay, you don't have any more of those, or you have so little of them that they're not effective, they're responsible for directly attacking things, and your immune system is weakened, and you die from something that you normally wouldn't, right? Pneumonia, a cold, right? Something like that, because your body can no longer fight it effectively. Does that make sense? Okay.